Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. My special guest tonight is Sean Darity. He is running for Congress for District 19, and he's running as a Green. Welcome, Sean. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Sabby. I've been listening to you for a long time.
All right. So first and foremost, I want to get into your campaign, and then we're going to dive into this broader picture of what the Green Party is trying to do and how Cornel West is expanding not just his campaign, but the Green Party coalition, so to speak. So I want to bring up your website here. So again, you're running for Congress as the Green for District 19. First and foremost, can you tell everybody a little bit about that district, where it's located, and some of the issues that you're dealing with there?
Sure. So California 19 is located, it has 4 counties in it, one of them being Santa Cruz, that's where I live, as well as Santa Clara, Monterey, and SLO. It's all south of San Francisco is what you need to know. It's the Bay Area, lots of tech money. One of the biggest issues we face here is unaffordable housing. Unfortunately, our county has even featured on your show, Sabby, when you've talked about those studies saying what the real minimum wage is in an area. Yeah, I believe you said for us it was about $35 an hour. And let me tell you, most of the jobs around here are not paying that. Okay. To rent a 2-bedroom, it's maybe $3,500, and that's not for a nice one, right? That's one that's hasn't been remodeled in decades, So we've got a very large homeless population, a lot of people living by the river, and the solution of our local politicians is to just scatter the camps. If you can't see them, then it's not a problem. So I'd say that's the biggest problem that you can see when you come here. I can tell you what motivated me to run for office in the first place is that the incumbent, a Democrat, is one of the leading advocates for escalation in Ukraine. Just to give you an idea, earlier this year, there were a handful of Congresspeople who signed an open letter to Biden calling for F-16s to be sent to Ukraine. Right. So he really stands out as a warmonger. And a handful of activists and I tried to schedule some time with him while he was in the district, outside of DC, back home. And we couldn't even get 5 minutes with him to talk about our concerns. And that's actually what motivated me to run this campaign. I wanted to bring this issue to the fore, and I wanted to break through the media narrative that it's only MAGA that wants to end this war through diplomacy. And I have to say, I got more support than I was expecting. It's really great, especially from peace activists, but progressives generally, because, remember when progressives were talking about Medicare for all? It's like as the Democrats don't really seem to talk about that anymore. So I think running as a Green provides a great platform to talk about that. And it doesn't ring hollow, I think, when you're running outside of the Democratic Party and you're calling for these things. And finally, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Finally, climate is a really big issue for this campaign. We're focusing on how the incumbent takes money from the fossil fuel industry. We highlight his campaign donations and how he's voted in favor of new gas and oil drilling projects. So I think a lot of local climate activists are excited about calling him out on that in the context of an election, getting this in front of voters, because hopefully that will be effective at pushing him away from taking money. He also takes a lot of money from defense contractors, unsurprisingly.
Who is the incumbent?
Jimmy Panetta.
Oh, okay. Jimmy Panetta. So here are some of the issues for Sean's platform. Homes, not bases. I think a lot of us we can all agree on that. Homes, not bases.
Can I just say one thing about that? Homes, not bases, because I think this is really important. The amount of money that we spend on overseas bases, if we weren't spending that money on bases, we could give every homeless person a home, and we could give everybody tuition-free college. Literally, it's almost exactly the same amount of money. So that's the choice that our government is making. That's our priorities. We have the money. Go on. Sorry.
That's right. This is why I keep telling people that foreign policy is connected to domestic policy at home. The other one is, of course, a Green New Deal, which actually started with the Green Party. That did not start with AOC and Ed Markey. They took that and they watered it down.
Yeah. Yeah.
No new oil and gas.
Mm-hmm.
This is a big one. Expand civil rights. Medicare for all, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Fight crimes causes. So this is different from what a lot of other people are saying. Other people are saying we need more police or we need more prisons. And as I've said before, that like, no, you need to actually solve the core problem that's causing a lot of these crimes. I always say it's linked to poverty.
Mm-hmm.
And then also end war profits, immigration, democratic economy. This piece right here on immigration, I think people need to hear this. We should welcome people who reach our borders seeking a better life rather than deterring immigration through inhumane border policies. We must address the reasons people flee their home countries by respecting the sovereignty of their nations, supporting climate resilience abroad, and addressing climate emissions at home. We can reduce the number of people needing to find refuge here. Yeah, this is really important. A lot of times people talk about immigration, they have immigration policy, but they don't talk about the reason why so many people are coming here in the first place, which I think you hit the nail on the head there with that. And then this piece here about the elites. True democracy requires that ordinary people, not a handful of elites, control the economy. We must democratize our economy with increased union membership, co-ops, and worker-appointed corporate boards. Congress must support unions unequivocally and must never interfere in contract negotiations or strikes unless requested by the union. Well, I agree with this 100%.
Yeah, I mean, that's, in my opinion, that's a good segue into the Green Party and why I'm running as a Green. Because I think the problem that we have in this country is that a handful of elites are in control of everything. And that's why we have these irrational systems that fail all of us. I mean, Medicare for all is a great example. You know, the mainstream narrative is, well, how are you going to pay for that? And of course, people like you and I know it's actually less expensive than the current system. You know, how are you going to pay for that thing that costs half as much, right? So it costs less and everybody would have coverage. Well, why do we have this irrational and inefficient system? Well, profits for the corporations. It's that simple. It really, I feel like most of these problems, the answer is really simple: profits. And so that's why I'm a strong supporter of the Green Party. Sorry if you don't mind. So the Green Party, the reason why I'm interested in the Green Party is that corporate donations aren't allowed. So I, as a candidate, I don't take corporate donations. I also choose not to take large donations from individuals, but nobody in the Green Party takes corporate donations. So I don't feel like that's enough to solve everything, but I think that's a good step. And I used to be a Democrat. I used to believe strongly in the progressive Democrats, Bernie Sanders, the squad. You know, I fought hard for Bernie, both elections, 2016, 2020. I was knocking on doors, making phone calls, donating money, all that. But I came to the conclusion that it doesn't matter if an individual isn't taking corporate donations if ultimately they answer to party leaders that do. I think that's why the squad has failed us. And so that's why I have given up. I've completely given up on the Progressive Democrat project, and I am fully in with the Green Party.
100%. Well said. And speaking of that, you know, last time Justin was here, he was talking about how to increase ballot access for the Green Party, in particular, Cornel West campaign. I already saw some of those have already been updated. So it looks like there's been access achieved in some of the other states that weren't green at that time that are green now. So I did just see that a minute ago. But one of the things that he said was that this isn't just about Cornel West's run for 2024. This is about a broader Green Party coalition and having people also run for other positions as a Green, like yourself. There's another young woman in New Jersey that's running for Congress as a Green. Can you explain to everyone why you think it's important that we expand the Green Party, not just for like a presidential race, so to speak, but why we expand the Green Party and how do we do it?
Right. Okay. Well, my perspective is mostly centric to California because I operate within the Green Party of California. But I think a lot of why I'm involved with that applies to all states. So first of all, it's not enough. Even if Cornel West were to become president, it wouldn't. We'd still have a Democratic Party controlling the Congress or a Republican Party. That is to say, we'd have a corporate controlled Congress. So there would only be so much that he could do. I mean, there's a lot of executive power, but still, we need to also be in control of the Congress. I mean, look at what the progressive Democrats have given us in the war in Ukraine, right? Like unconditional support for it. So I think it's that simple. As I said, I think the problem that we have primarily is corporate control. And it's not going to be until we overthrow that we're going to be able to get sensible programs that take care of our people, like Medicare for all, housing for all. Now, as a member of the Green Party of California, I'm excited about Cornel West because that's helping us reactivate the counties in California. Now, probably a lot of people don't know this. I didn't know this until I actually became a part of the California Party. I'm actually a member of one of the committees. What I found out is that Bernie Sanders almost killed the Green Party in California. Bernie Sanders almost killed our ballot access. And that's because in California, if you have enough registered voters, enough people registered to vote Green in the presidential primary, that keeps you on the ballot. And so that's one of the reasons why I, as a Californian, am very frustrated when I hear people advocate. I'm not going to name online names, but when I hear people who I like advocating for voting in the Democratic primary, presidential primary, and then voting Green in the general, that's no good. That's no good. Not in California. I can't speak to other states, but in California, you need to be registered as a Green when you vote in the primary so that we stay on the ballot the next time around. But what's happening? Go ahead.
So I just want to make sure everyone heard that, because I think that's really important. Obviously, different states have really different like rules in reference to like Green Party or third parties in general. But what you just said there, I think, is very key. So you're saying that particularly for your state of California, if people vote for a presidential candidate in the Democrat primary, but they're thinking about supporting like someone like Cornel West in the general election, you're saying that particularly in your state, that would be an issue. Right.
You will not be helping the Green Party stay on the ballot for the next election cycle. And that's why Bernie Sanders almost killed us in California. So many people switched their registration to Democrat in order to vote for Bernie in the primary in 2016. It almost lost the Green Party its ballot access. We barely hung on.
Right, because not everybody that voted for Bernie Sanders was a registered Democrat. So some people switched their registration so that they could support him in the primary. This is very important, Eric. We're going to have to clip this. We're definitely going to have to clip this because a lot of people are saying that. They said, I'll support, Marianne or RFK in the Dem primary if RFK stays in the Dem primary. I'll talk about that later today. And then when the general election comes around, I'll vote Green. But again, this all depends on which state you live in.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I can't speak to the other states. I only know my own state's law, but that's right. And most people, I think, don't know that. As I said, I didn't. But here's the good news, Sabby. Cornel West is very exciting. I can tell you the committee that I serve on is called the MOC, Membership and Outreach Committee. And so when new people sign up to volunteer for the Green Party of California, I get the email, and then I'm responsible for like forwarding that on to the right people in the right county. Okay, and we're getting a lot more of those. A lot more. Part of that is the excitement of the presidential primary, but come on, it's Cornel West. This is very exciting. And another thing that's happening, let me just say that what we're trying to do in California is we're trying to reactivate counties. So in California, we have these county bodies. Each political party does. By law, we have to have these county committees. And a lot of the Green Party county committees died. I think with Nader, that was kind of the height of the party. And then it started dying out. Like my county isn't currently activated. And so what we're doing is, with the excitement of Cornell West, we're trying to encourage people to reform these county councils in order to reconstitute the Green Party of California. And in fact, we just activated Orange County, which is a very big county in California. That just happened in the past week.
I was about to say, part of Orange County is pretty wealthy, right? Like,
yeah,
part of it is, and part of it isn't, from what I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, so that brings me to the Bernie question, because one of the criticisms that some people have had is the whole sheepdogging mentality, right? So how do you break away from the Bernie Sanders sheepdogging effect? Because some people are afraid of that. Some people are saying Dr. West is going to drop out. Although this is weird hearing this from people, because Jill Stein obviously did not drop out. I don't remember Green Party presidential candidates, as long as I've been able to vote, dropping out of the presidential race and endorsing the Democrat candidate. But some people are already saying that. They're saying Dr. West is going to drop out and he's going to endorse Joe Biden. And I was like, he's in the general election. He's not in the Democratic primary. How do you prevent that, the Bernie Sanders sheepdogging effect?
Well, I can tell you what's worked for me. What broke me away from the progressive Democrats was seeing their hypocrisy. How they claim to care about, say, fighting climate change, but then they go along with the Inflation Reduction Act, which dramatically increased the amount of federal lands available for drilling. I think that's a really good example. So I think we need to, and I think I've been seeing a lot of this online, at least in my own little section of the Twitter sphere, people pointing out this hypocrisy, especially say AOC at that recent climate rally in New York City, right, where she was saying the powers that be are increasing drilling. Who are the powers that be? I think we just need to call out, I think those kind of little clips are really effective when it's accompanied with someone point out, who is the power that be? That is Joe Biden. Have you endorsed Joe Biden? Oh, you have. Yep. So what does that mean? That means you're going to go along with anything ultimately that the party leadership tells you to do. And I think that we need to make the argument I'm trying to make is, as I said earlier, it doesn't matter if the individual doesn't take corporate money if they're ultimately answering to people who do take corporate money. It's that simple. And I think we also need to, point out these rigged elections. How can you say that the Democrats care about democracy when they rig their elections? They clearly don't. So I guess that's my answer, mostly, is pointing out the hypocrisy.
How are you going to convince, or actually anyone running in the Green Party, how are they going to convince progressives or liberals to support diplomacy in Ukraine?
Yeah, so I recently put out a statement. If you go to seanforpeace.org and go to the statement section, there's a statement I just put out called "The Left Wants Peace." And what I do there is I look at some survey data. There's a Quincy Institute survey that came out just a year ago, which showed that, in fact, most Democrats at that time supported diplomacy in Ukraine, even if it meant some territorial concessions. So there's actually a lot of Democrats who currently, or at least a year ago, supported diplomacy. And I can tell you anecdotally, from being on the campaign trail, talking to my neighbors, that there are a lot of people who identify on the left, or as Democrats even, who want diplomacy in Ukraine, but they're afraid to say it. I have had multiple people literally say that to me. They're afraid to say it to their friends and family because they believe that that makes them MAGA. And so they don't want to admit to it.
That's really weird. Here's that statement from you. I do want to go ahead and bring this up here. It says the left wants peace. Don't believe the media. Progressives support diplomacy in Ukraine. So I think this is important for people to hear. It just sounds like some people are not willing to come out and say it. And then you put this here that they'll be branded as a MAGA sympathizer or a Putin puppet if they say that. And then here's that poll here. Knowing what you know now, what would you say? Would you say you support or oppose the U.S. engaging in negotiations to try to end the war in Ukraine quickly? 70% of Democrats said they supported it, 59% independent, 54% Republican, 21% Democrat opposed it, 25% independent opposed it, and 30% Republican opposed it. And that was September 2022.
Right.
So what changed?
Well, I don't think much has changed. That's really the argument that I'm making, is that there are still a lot of people who do support diplomacy, but they're not admitting to it. And what I show, the rest of this article, I point at survey data coming out of like CNN and Reuters, and it part of what I'm arguing there is the media is pushing a narrative. Like, look at this one. Look at the question that it asks. Like, how long should we basically stay the course in Ukraine? And there's no option there to say, well, we shouldn't, or we should pursue diplomacy, right? So the media is pushing that, and I think skewing people's perceptions. But so they don't really normally ask the question like that first one, where they're actually trying to directly measure the amount of support for diplomacy. So we actually don't really know, because even back then, let me tell you, when that Quincy survey came out, I went into my congressman's office. I printed that out, and I went into my congressman's office and I said to his staff, the media narrative that it's only MAGA that doesn't want this war is false. And look, here's current data. So I don't know that it really has changed in a year, because the media was saying the same thing when that survey came out. We don't know what the situation is now because they're not trying to measure it.
Another thing people have to understand too, and I actually found this out recently watching JB's interview with Larry Sharp, they pay for these polls. The Democratic Party pays for this poll. The Republican Party pays for this poll. So if you're paying for the poll, obviously it's going to show a certain narrative. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, this is why, like, this is something Larry was explaining. He was like, he didn't know until he ran for office, when he was running for governor of New York, that he actually, if he wanted to be included in the polls, he had to actually pay for the poll. Just like you have to pay for ads if you're running as a candidate. So that's something to keep in mind, people. When you do see these polls, just remember who's paying for the poll. And that's JB in the chat said, yep, that's what he said. Yeah, that's a really important thing that I think a lot of people are just not aware of, that they're paying for it. And then that'll help you understand why things are worded the way they are. Do you think the U.S. should do more to stop Russian military actions in Ukraine, or has it already done enough? Again, look at the way the question is worded. And the source is CNN. So 61% of Democrats say should do more, 43% independent, 40% Republican. Has done enough, 38% Democrat, 56% independent, 59% Republican, and then don't know / refused. Obviously, see, that's the lowest. But why is the question worded this way again? Like, do you think the U.S. should do more to stop Russian military actions in Ukraine? Like,
but what if more means diplomacy? Like, they don't tell you what more is, but they're pushing you. Like, you're supposed to understand more to be more weapons, right? Like ATACMS missiles or whatever.
That's right. Like, why isn't it? Notice none of these questions are ever, do you think there should be peace in Ukraine?
Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
Do you think the war should end? Do you think there should be a call to end this war? So people have to pay very close attention to the way the questions are worded. If you get this poll, how are you going to answer? Like, if you say has done enough, according to mainstream media narrative, you are a Putin puppet, so to speak, as you would say, Sean, right? Or you're not caring about the Ukrainian people. If you say should do more, that goes along with the narrative that is coming from mainstream outlets like CNN.
Yeah, that's right.
There's no choice here for the war should just end. There should be a call for peace. That's not an option.
Right, and that's why I opened up this piece with that Quincy survey, because that was such an outlier that they actually asked people about diplomacy. And I mean, I encourage people to go look at it. I have a link to it right under the table. That they asked about diplomacy in a number of different ways. So they were actually trying to understand Americans' attitudes, and it showed Americans overwhelmingly supported it.
But but think about something, guys. This question, knowing what you know now, would you say you support or oppose the U.S. engaging in negotiations to try to end the war in Ukraine quickly?
It's important. I didn't put it. I don't want to get too wall of text, but actually in that question, they clarify what if the negotiations meant territorial concessions by Ukraine. So go on.
Okay, but still, the majority are saying that they would support some type of negotiation. Mm-hmm. But then when you get to, that's the Quincy Institute poll. But then when you get to this question, which is from CNN, do you think the U.S. should do more to stop Russian? So then it's kind of tricky, because it's like, if you said yes, they should move towards some type of negotiations, which could include some type of settlements for Ukraine or territorial possessions for Ukraine. But then you get to this question, which again, still a different poll. But then it's like, how do you answer this based on what you just said from the previous poll?
Exactly. Yeah. So this is, I think, a major part of how they're shaping the narrative. So many people, I can tell you, like, people involved with my campaign express frustration and confusion after they hear some story out of the New York Times where it's like, you know, this Republican senator said this about the war, and they say, I feel so confused. Like, why am I agreeing with far-right Republicans? Like, even people on my campaign are susceptible to this, like, because they don't see any progressives. And let's not forget something else I point out in that piece you were just looking at. Remember when the Progressive Caucus put out a letter calling for diplomacy in Ukraine late last year, and that was shut down within 24 hours, right? So any hint that progressives support diplomacy is immediately shut out of the mainstream media. And I think it's really effective. They're really good at manipulating the public.
And remember the reason that Pramila Jayapal gave for why she decided to shut down that letter, which Ro Khanna also said, like, he didn't agree with Pramila Jayapal on that. She chose to shut it down because she said, we can't make it look like we are agreeing with the Republican Party.
Did she say that?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
I forgot that.
Because I covered that story, and she said the reason why we decided to withdraw it is because we can't be agreeing with the Republicans, what they're saying on the far right.
Wow. That's twisted logic. And I try to encourage people to not think in that way in terms of groups. You have to think in terms of principles. And I think that's one of the things that my campaign is doing, is it's breaking through, because I think probably all of your audience agrees that we are manipulated through the duopoly, through that red and blue divide and conquer. And we can't think in those terms. We have to think in terms of higher principles. And I think that's what a Green Party campaign can do. It can cut through that fake dichotomy and just talk about, like, the healthcare and ending the wars, and regardless of who else agrees with that,
Right. And I want to show people again, for those who may not have seen this last time when Justin was here, this is the ballot access right now for Cornel West campaign. I want to remind you, obviously, the Green Party already had, I believe it was a little over 20 states for ballot access, and they're trying to get more. Let's remember also, Jill Stein was on the ballot in over 40 states in this country. So it can be done again. But if you look here, like the light green, just want to make sure I say this, light green is achieved, orange is in progress, dark green is ready, and gray is not started. So just look at, for a second, look at the ones that are already achieved. Let's look at all the greens, the light green and the dark green. That's a significant amount. Basically, what you have to pick up, and the orange states are the ones that are in progress. So they're already on the move in the orange states. Basically, what they're going to have to focus on is these gray states, right? So like Minnesota would be huge. They already achieved it in Wisconsin. That's going to be significant. They already achieved it in Michigan. Remember, these are some of those states where, you know, Hillary Clinton struggled, right? So Wisconsin and Michigan. If they can grab Minnesota, Pennsylvania, and if they can grab, Georgia might be harder, but if they can grab Minnesota and Pennsylvania, we could see some type of a change. This is not to say that Cornel West is going to win, but it is to say that there could be some type of significant shakeup here in reference to the duopoly. And then let's remember what Justin said about some of the other states like Massachusetts. For Massachusetts, it's a little bit different. Basically, to vote for green, you just have to register as a green in order to get that ballot access. So Massachusetts is a little bit different. But this is important for people to see, because I want people to understand that this is achievable. You talk about like the Libertarian Party, they're on the ballot in all 50 states. Okay, so this is something. So if Jill Stein was on the ballot in over 40 states, and Jill Stein announced in 2016, not 2015, and Cornel West is already announced now, and the election is next year, I think they could get over 40. Like Jill Stein did. I think they could.
Well, and you know what I'm really hoping, Sabby, is that Cornell can get over 5%, because then we'll be able to get federal funding for campaigns. And let me just tell you, it's really expensive to run a campaign. I mean, just to get on the ballot, I have to spend $4,500. And then if I want to have a statement in the voter guide that's mailed out to everybody's mailboxes before the election, it's going to cost me 15 grand just to get 250 words in there. So any kind of campaign funding assistance would be huge for a campaign like mine.
That's right. All right. Well, Sean, thank you so much for coming on again. Where can people go to support your campaign? Well,
go to seanforpeace.org. You can see it on the screen there. And one of the biggest ways that you can help us is go on social media and follow our accounts, because we're just getting the social media accounts started, and I want the follower accounts to look better. So that would be a tremendous free way to help. Just we're on Instagram, Twitter, on X, and and Facebook. And also, like I said, any little donation could help, because we're trying to raise funds just to get on the ballot right now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sean, and good luck.
Thank you so much, Sabby.
Bye. All right, guys. So again, that's just the first step. There are other people that have reached out as well, but that is one of the examples of expanding Cornel West Green Party campaign. Remember what Justin said when he came onto the show. It's not just about Cornel West presidential race. They're also trying to get other candidates to run green for some of those congressional seats as well, and some of those local races. So that is already on the move. So there'll be other people coming on too that have reached out to me as well.